So here we are then, folks. Welcome along to another tactics video here on FIFA 22. My name's Ash. You'll know me as Brommer18. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're new to the channel, this is a series where I show you how to recreate real tactics in FIFA. It's not a promise that you'll win every game, but it is a promise that the tactic will be recreated as accurately and as lifelike as I possibly can make it within the constraints of the game. If you're a returning viewer, thank you very much for coming back today. In this video, we are covering Antonio Conte's Juventus system. This has been voted for by my Patreons, and we'll talk about that very much in a minute, but it did beat out the likes of Jurgen Klopp's Dortmund, so worth keeping an eye on, but we'll talk about that very, very soon. The team itself was the Invincibles team, the team that won the Serie A back in 2011-2012. Most notably, though, didn't actually win the most games in the Serie A that season. They won 23, whereas the team below them, Inter, won 24. But they did finish unbeaten and eventually win the title, so that was, of course, the most impressive thing. For anyone who is a subscriber to the channel, I do apologise for recently the lack of content. There's only been really about an upload a week, one video a week. You know, a lot of reasons for that, one of which, though, I will say is there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes regarding my Patreon. As I just alluded to earlier, if you haven't done so already, go and check out my Patreon. Lots of brilliant perks and rewards on there, including access to exclusive tactics videos that I wouldn't do on the channel that you can get access to, as well as my FIFA 22 custom tactics packages where I give ratings and rankings on every tactic that we cover, as well as a deep dive, suitable teams for players, etc. Also, what I announced this week is what is coming out very, very soon, my player scouting board. Real scout reports on a whole range of different players around the world. I am a fully qualified football scout, so I do believe there is some validity to those scouting reports, so you can get access to this scouting package. With all of these reports, you get to see real techniques that real scouts use for clubs all around the world. Within that report, you know, hundreds and hundreds of hours of analysis gone into these players, you know, analysed to the very millisecond. So please do go and check that out as well. By the time some of you are watching this, it will already be out, so please do check that. Anyway, I'm really sorry for spending like 2.5 minutes rambling. It is time to get into the tactic. Well then, what do we have? So first things first, we've got a 3-5-2, and that was what the system was. Occasionally it would morph around. Sometimes we saw like a narrow diamond. There are elements, really, all sorts. They started off with like a 4-3-3 as well, but we're going to stick with the 3-5-2 because that was the consensus formation. Now, I've got a balanced tactic. We've also got a defensive tactic and an attacking tactic as well. Show you how they adapted slightly depending on the situation. But first things first, let's talk about the actual balanced game plan. Well, we've got the 3-5-2, and the formation you want to do is the 3-1-4-2. That's with one defensive midfielder and then two central midfielders ahead of them. In terms of position changes, there are none, so you don't need to worry about that. So we can move straight on to the tactics. So what do we have in the tactics section then? Well, first things first, defensively we have pressure on heavy touch, and what this is going to do is generally the team is going to regain their defensive shape and form that, well, mid-block in this case, as we'll talk about shortly, but it means that occasionally the team will press forward. When the opposition are playing themselves into trouble, when there's a chance for you to win the ball, they will then instigate a press. You can also complement this by utilizing the team press function, which is where you press left and then down on the D-pad of your controller, and that will also instigate a press for a few seconds as well. And then defensive width is down to 20. Despite the fact that we have 3 midfield and 3 centre backs, it's still very compact, as are Antonio Conte teams. So as a result, we've got this on 20, and it's going to give you a nice narrow shape. Particularly with that 3 back, it is harder for the opposition to play through you as well. The depth is on 50, and what this is going to give you is a nice mid-block. Again, means that they have a bit of balance in between, regaining their defensive shape, but also, as we spoke about, that occasional press as well. If you were on a low block, it would be much harder to instigate that press because the team would just be too far down the pitch. Whereas on 50, they're a little bit further up, and it enables them to do that if and when they need to. So offensively, what do we have? Well, there's going to be a little bit of a contradiction here, but let me talk about what we have. We have build-up play on slow build-up, but the chance creation is direct passing. Now, with the direct passing, we know what Conte's teams are like. They like to get the ball up to a target man very, very quickly, skip out the midfield if they need to, or skip out certain phases and certain sections of the pitch and then get the ball up quickly. However, the reason why we have slow build-up is because there are still lots of times, particularly as Juventus, playing as Juventus, you're coming against a lot of teams that are going to be, you know, quite passive, low block, defensive, not looking to press you. So as a result, with slow build-up, players are still going to come and show for the ball in the defensive half. However, you will still have the option to go direct if and when you need to, because you'll still have the forwards up top, in particular your target man, who you'll be able to play long to. And once you get it into the attacking half, then chance creation comes into play and players will start to get forward. We'll also change the player instructions as well in order to make this as effective as possible. The width is up to 90. It's going to give you a very, very wide shape, stretching the team out almost as much as possible. The wing backs are the ones obviously creating all of the width, but it's important to make sure that they are on the touchline pretty much as often as possible. It's also important to try and get people more spread out. You want the strikers, you know, perhaps utilising those half spaces and one of them out on the wing as well. And also the centre-backs are willing in possession to spread out a bit more in order, you know, to provide passing options and just get into a little bit of space. Players in the box is on 7. This is going to give you roughly 3 to 4 players getting into the box. That's going to be the 2 strikers. You're going to have either the central midfielder, probably the central midfielder, one of the box-to-box central midfielders, and then one of the wing backs as well. But usually one of the wing backs is the one crossing the ball, so the other wing back will then often come into the box. We didn't move this up to 4 because just in case one of the wing backs doesn't go into the box and instead you've got the second central midfielder coming in. That's not what you want. You're only really looking in the balanced game plan to have one central midfielder getting into the box. Finally, corners and free kicks, both of these are up to 4, giving you a nice amount of targets in the box. This will change depending on the game plan as well, that we'll talk about very, very shortly. So if you also need to mention that I forget to in these videos, if you want to see gameplay firsthand, so you will see the gameplay above, but some people say that they can't really focus on it because they're looking at the tactics. I do show the gameplay after this as well at the end of the video, so please do stick around for that if you want to. Next up then, onto the player instructions. Starting off with the keeper, just the one instruction that we're changing here. That is saving on crosses. We want him coming for crosses in this situation. Sweeper keeper though, we don't need to change that with the saving outside the box because you're playing a mid block, not as required. Plus it was Gianluigi Buffon who, you know, we know wasn't really that kind of mobile kind of keeper. So we keep him on balanced. The 3 centre-backs, the only thing you need to change, and with all 3 of them, is the interceptions. We're going to move these to conservative interceptions. This is to stop them coming out just the way they really play, the way a Conte sort of back 3 plays, particularly in his earlier days, in the likes when he was at Siena and Juventus as well. In this case, what you want is you don't want them charging about, looking to really impose themselves on the ball. Instead, they retain their shape. They act as that sort of protector, you know, in particular defensive issues and vulnerabilities that Juventus had in the early days under Conte. He changed that back 3 as a result of that. So that's what we're trying to replicate in this case. With the 2 wing backs, both of them are on the same instructions. They're on comeback on defence naturally, acting as those wing backs. Remember, they are wide midfielders, but don't worry, they will still bed in with the defence and form a back 5. The game does a good job of recognising that you don't have any fullbacks, so you need them to get back, so that's very important. Chance creation is stay wide, as we spoke about earlier. They will be the ones creating the width, so they'll be on the touchline, and then support runs is getting behind as they look to penetrate the opposition. Very, very important in Antonio Conte's system. We know how important and fundamental the wing backs are to these systems when there's only them on that side, on each flank. So as a result, we get behind, makes you less passive, really you know, enables you to pin back the opposition as well, and also helps when you're trying to play it from the back. They will often, you know, drive further forward, which again does sort of force the opposition back on the flanks. Finally, with the support on crosses, the both of them are on getting to the box with a cross as well. Right then, so onto the midfield. First off with Locatelli, who's playing that Pirlo role. What we have is that real deep line playmaker, as you'd expect with Andrea Pirlo. So, defensive behaviour is cut passing lanes as they try and lock off any lanes as possible. They don't go man for man. The attacking support is naturally stay back while attacking. But also on interceptions, we have conservative interceptions. Naturally, Pirlo isn't moving about often. You know, he's really just staying within that sort of central zone, you know, not really closing down opposition. So that's what we're trying to replicate in this case. The two central midfielders ahead of him are the ones who are going to do all the work. You know, that's that sort of Marquisio, Vidal, and occasionally Paul Pogba role as well. His defensive position is cover centre, again trying to stop him from moving out too much from side to side. But then his positioning freedom, something that we didn't have the liberty of until this year, is free roam. And that's going to hopefully enable him to be drifting around into the pockets of space more, make it easier for you to play it from the back. And again, really good way to try and recreate that deep lying playmaker role. The two central midfielders have slightly different instructions. We've got this real box-to-box midfielder on the right, and then more of just a sort of zonal midfielder on the left. So starting off with the box-to-box with Weston McKennie, his attacking support is balanced. Why is it balanced? Well, because we don't want him making runs in behind the strikers all the time, but we do want him getting into the box. So as a result, we have this on balance, but support on crosses will be getting to the box for the cross. Finally, with positioning freedom and defensive position, you want him on cover wing. Naturally, as we spoke about, he'll be the one doing the work along with Zakaria in this case. And then positioning freedom, stick to position as well. They're the ones really playing the role within that central areas. You don't want too many players drifting out wide in an Antonio Conte system. Now, on the other hand, with the left and right central midfielders, and that's another important thing to mention, by the way, I do apologise, make sure that these two central midfielders are left central midfielder and right central midfielder, as opposed to just CMs. You can usually only have one anyway, but just make sure that that is the case. So with Zakaria, what do we have? Well, we have him on stay back while attacking. Again, as I spoke about, he's not the one who's getting into the box, and we don't want him making those runs in behind the strikers. So we do as much as we possibly can to stop him from doing that. So we also have him on stay on the edge of the box for the cross as well. His defensive position, like McKennie on the right hand side, is on cover wing and also stick to position. So what do we have with the two strikers then? Well, first things first with Dybala, he's playing that more mobile forward role. So we're looking at someone maybe like a Del Piero, whereas, you know, the other striker that will target around might be like a Quagliarella, a Matri, etc. So with Dybala first, we've got drift wide on support runs, and we've got attacking runs on getting behind. And what we're trying to do here is just try and get as much movement as possible. Now, occasionally, it could also change so that he would be more of a false 9, and he'd sort of drop off into the pockets more. But what we're looking for here, and in this case what I found to be most helpful for FIFA, is you really want someone who's going to create extra movement and bounce off the target man. So I've actually opted for the getting behind sort of more mobile striker in that case. He's going to be one. He'll support out wide. You know, the central midfielders don't need to do that. That's what he needs to do. And he'll also look to penetrate the back line as well. He's also on comeback on defence, on attacking support. It will just be the target man who does stay forward. Speaking of that target man, Vlahovic, in this case, like I say, Quagliarella maybe, or a Matri as well. He's on stay central as he looks to play the role of that focal point, that one who will hold the ball up, as he will with the target man runs as well. He'll look to back into the opposition, look for it into feet and in the air as well, as he looks to bring it down, and then he'll get runners around him, the box-to-box midfielder, the striker, the wing back, and these guys are running around him, and then he can target and help to play off them. Finally, defensive support is on stay forward. Right then, let's talk about the two game plans. First things first, with the defensive game plan. Well, what do we have? Well, the formation stays the same, but the tactics and a couple of the player instructions are different. So what do we have in terms of the tactics? Well, we have drop back on defensive style. This time, you can put away any suggestion of the team trying to press. In this case, they are trying to see out the game as much as they possibly can. They will drop off the defensive line as well. Not quite to a low block. This time it's 40 though, as opposed to 50 as it was in the balanced game plan. Still a mid block, but lower. And it's just trying to be obviously more passive, but you don't want to be completely passive. So as a result, with that mid block, they can still sort of impose themselves on the team, particularly when they enter Juventus's defensive half. In terms of attacking, what does change here is the players in the box. This time this goes down to 5, which is going to mean you are going to have 2, maybe 3 players getting into the box. Obviously the 2 strikers, and then it will probably be the box-to-box central midfielder. Other than that, other players are going to remain back. And as a result, you're not going to have too many players committing into the box. The corners and free kicks do actually stay the same on the defensive one because set pieces are still a very important part. They're a very important part of Conte's approach, and so as a result, they're going to be the biggest chance you have, of still scoring a goal, even if you are trying to see the game out. As for the player instructions, just a couple of minor tweaks. This time, the wing-backs, as opposed to being get into the box for crosses, instead they are just unbalanced. As we just kind of alluded to, the chances are they're not really going to be committing as much. It's probably going to be the box-to-box midfielder, but they are unbalanced just in case the box-to-box midfielder doesn't commit, and he said one of them may get into the box instead. But they are really the only minor tweaks that you need to make to the defensive instructions. So what about the attacking game plan then? Well, again, the formation stays the same. The tactics and instructions will differ though. This time the defensive style becomes press after possession loss. This is going to give you a more counter-pressing outlet, and as a result what you'll find is they're going to be less passive. You also still, as I spoke about earlier, you can instigate a press if and when you need to as well. If you feel like the counter press hasn't lasted long enough, the team have managed to play through it, you can still then instigate a press. This time the depth goes up to 70, and this is going to give you a high line, but it is the lowest high line you can have, as you can see by the description, before it becomes a mid block. So again, this is just to complement that counter press. This time, build-up play changes and it becomes fast build-up as Juventus will become, increasingly more desperate. They're trying to get the ball forward, hit them on the counter-attack if and when they need to. Just get it forward as much as possible. Commit men and commit numbers, forward. Finally, the players in the box is up to 9, and this is going to give you between 4 and 5. This time, the other central midfielder will be joining those crossing situations, and the corners and free kicks have also been moved up to 5 as well, as we look to get as many players into the box as possible, in order to try and press for a goal. As for the player instructions, well, there are a couple of changes. For one, the central midfielder, left central midfielder this time, who was on balance, stay on the edge of the box before, he's now on getting to the box for the cross. In addition, with the strikers, you'll remember that Dybala last time was on comeback on defence. Now he's on stay forward, as they look to keep both strikers forward, as opposed to getting one of them to track back as well. And that is really it for the attacking game plan, and as a result, the tactic as a whole. If you've got any questions about it, please do let me know in the comment section and I will get back to you. As I said earlier, apologies for the lack of uploads in recent weeks, but there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes with that Patreon, and go and check that out, by the way. Lots of brilliant rewards and perks, including my scouting report. Lots of real scout reports on real players based on hundreds of hours of analysis, so please do go and check that out. If you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so that you get notifications every time I upload a video. Don't forget to drop a like if you haven't done so already, and in the description check out the link to my Twitter. Give me a follow on there, and I'll really appreciate it. Don't forget to check out any of my other videos as well, and on that note, we're going to round it off there. Next up, we're going to go into the gameplay that you can see the tactic in action for yourself. On that note though, until next time, I will see you soon.
Sostituzione per il Milan. Fuori con il numero 30 Junior Messias. Entra in campo con il numero 12 Ante Rebic. Assegno la formazione ospite con il numero 10 Paulo Dybala. Sostituzione per il Milan. Esce dal campo con il numero 10 Brahim Diaz. Entra con il